Good morning. It is I again. Whew. I hope everybody had a great evening. Welcome to day 20. I am going to let the room load for 1 second as we sit here and we contemplate the testimony from yesterday. I went and listened to Nate quite a bit, got his feeling on what he saw in the courtroom, what he felt in the courtroom, and you can just feel how much this trial has basically affected him and most likely has affected everyone who was there, even though they didn't see what the jury was seeing. And I'll get to that in a second. I just cannot even imagine. I cannot imagine. I have seen in my years of doing what I'm doing autopsy photos. I've seen a lot of gruesome things that are heartbreaking and hard to fathom. But these cases that involve children are some of the worst and have basically affected me my entire life. And I say that because I had a family member that was it was a friend, but we, family. I'm adopted, so my whole thing about families is different. But this person was very close, and they lost a 3-year-old niece to a serial killer. And I went to that trial, and that was ages ago. And that is what formed the reason I watch trials today, and the reason that I do what I do and have done what I've done. And I've seen gruesome stuff. Listening to Nate and seeing his face as somebody who's reporting it's just hard. It's wrenching. You just can feel it. It's palpable. And I cannot even imagine what it was like for him. Actually, I can't. But my heart goes out to anyone who had to sit and watch what they watched. And that watching was just a jury reacting to what they were seeing. And I'm just going to get into it real quick. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to come over here and say hi. And then I will get to my talking a little bit about what Nate had to say. Candy, good morning. Always my first girl in the morning. Thank you so much for being here and supporting. Brian, welcome. Rabbit of Chaos, good to see you. I'm so glad. I think I saw you in here yesterday, but I was doing a lot of stuff and missed you. I'm sorry I missed you. I'm glad you're here. Cool Yeet, good morning. Welcome to our chat. And Mal, good morning. Wendy, good morning. So here we are. Glad to see everybody. If I miss you, just say hi in the chat and I'll get you throughout the day. I'll get you a hi. Linda, good morning. Also reminder that we do have the other trial. This is my main focus trial. That's a second trial that I decided to bring into. It is there if you want to watch it. It is the Karen Reed trial. And they're on day 8 over there. Everything for both of these trials you can see in the playlist for each of them. So I'm going to get straight to it and kind of go over a little bit of what Nate said. I didn't do too much. We hardly ever have that much time. But So yesterday was day 19. Today is day 20. There were 3 witnesses. I'm only going to speak about the first, but I wanted to give mention to the other 2. The first one that we'll be speaking about is the medical examiner, Dr. Garth Warren. He performed the autopsies on JJ and Tylee. Then there was Chandler Detective Ariel Werther. He went through the cell phone activity. Then there was a forensic scientist, Tara Martinez. I believe that she is the one who went over all the fingerprints and other stuff like that. But my main focus is going to be on the graphic autopsy photos that Nate said did cause several jurors to cry. Dr. Garth Warren, the medical examiner, talked about the autopsies of JJ and Tylee. This testimony was very graphic, and some of the photos that only the jury saw were also shown in Lori Vallow trial. I did not see them, or there was no seeing. That trial was audio only, and I didn't listen to it. Several of the jurors were seen crying when they showed those photos. The autopsies were performed in Ada County. Basically, Dr. Warren spoke about what he saw. JJ was brought in a body bag. I should stop real quick and say, trigger warning. Tylee was brought in several body bags, along with other bags. While they went through it all, Chat sat expressionless, but shook his head a few times. He didn't have much of a reaction, but the jurors most definitely did. Dr. Warren spoke about JJ's remains during his first hour on the stand before the judge called for a much-needed recess. After that, Warren spoke about Tylee's remains. It was all very hard to hear, and I can only imagine how tough it was for the jurors to see those photos. I cannot imagine, actually I can, seeing JJ wrapped in black plastic with a plastic bag over that. Warren stated that he died of asphyxia with a plastic bag and duct tape over his mouth. Warren stated there was a lot of duct tape and body decomposition. Warren also spoke about bruising that may have been caused by some struggle or JJ having to be held down. He mentioned the skin slippage that takes place during decomposition, which can cause areas to appear as bruising, but are actually not. They determine if the bruises are fresher by dissecting a portion and looking at it under a microscope. If hemorrhaging is seen, it's fresh bruise, which was the case. This is how they determined there was a struggle. Bruises were found on his upper body. Suspected bruises on his ankles were not the case after Warren tested them. Nate stated that during all of these photos and testimony, the courtroom was quiet as a mouse. Many different facial reactions throughout. I feel like Nate was saying that the courtroom reaction was due to how the jury was reacting, as they were the ones seeing the actual photos. In listening to Nate, I could feel his own life-altering reaction to just hearing the testimony and seeing how it all affected the jury. Again, during all this testimony, Chad was just sitting there, not responding, not showing much emotion. I also wanted to say a little bit about Tylee. I didn't get that far in how to describe her autopsy. She came in fragments, and there was not enough for them to make a diagnosis other than murder, and it was unspecified means. Very difficult. It's not that I don't take away from the suffering that we know and probably can imagine that she went through, but to try to describe it would take more time, and we are just about ready to start the day. So I want to later on give a little bit of recognition, and probably will play a little bit of, if I can find the testimony quickly, maybe we'll listen to a little bit of when he did the autopsy for Tylee. But I just wanted to put that out there and describe this sweet little boy that someone had the nerve to say was possessed and needed not to be alive anymore. My heart is broken with this one, but I just wanted to read through it, and this is a tough one. I just want to remind you guys that you can see all of the testimony for all of this trial in the playlist, and for the past couple of days, I may eventually go back later on sometime down the road and put the timelines in for all the first 15 days before I realized, hey, let's do a timeline or a timestamp, chapters and stuff. It makes it easier to find. Anyway, you can go in the timestamp for the description for each of the witnesses. The other parts that Nate Eaton spoke about were the timeline of when Charles died. Chandler Detective Ariel Werther went through the cell phone activity the morning Charles died. Again, that testimony is in the description of yesterday's live. He also spoke about, or Nate mentioned, Lori's stop at Burger King and Walgreens. I kind of want that. I want to go back later on in my own time and kind of listen to that and see what her reaction was and what she was doing in that. Fingerprints. Also, he spoke about those that were left on tape. These are other parts of this evidence that, who does it point to? There was also hair collected. If you remember at one point, I believe it was during Melanie Gibbs' testimony, she was asked if she gave a sample of her hair, and I believe she said she didn't. Is that what you guys remember? I think from her testimony, I think she said she didn't. I'd like to know and be able to go back over more of that and find out exactly what hair was collected and what they had to say about that. But we're getting ready to start soon. They probably won't start for another 10 minutes, but you know how they are. So all of this testimony can be watched in yesterday's live by clicking on the timestamp for each of the description. So that is where we are with my little recap. And now I want to see what you guys are saying in the chat. What was your reaction while you were listening? Not being able to see and really trying to listen to the description of what Dr. Warren was saying as he was going through each portion. It's very difficult to hear. It is. Did your mind try to close itself down while listening? And could you palpably feel what the jury was most likely feeling while they were listening? I saw Nate say in his updates as he was doing it that he would say, there's a juror crying, and this lady over here, I can see her head is down, that kind of thing. So just knowing that, I hope that in these cases, especially ones with children, that there is help for juries after they have to sit and watch and see what we're affected by hearing, but when you add the visual, you can only imagine how much different and difficult it is. I've seen both. I have seen a lot over the years, and someone asked me, how do you do it, and how do you not how do you get through this daily? Because you detach yourself. If you're doing this kind of thing, you detach yourself from the grueling, gruesome portion and separate it. You do your stuff and then you move on. And that's how I handle things when we have to see this kind of stuff. And yes, there are times where cameras do stay on the screen longer than they should. And those kind of pictures do get through, and the media does see. Later on, after trials, they release all of the evidence in these cases. And so eventually, all of the stuff that we're not seeing that's up on those prompters and stuff will most likely be released. And then if the public wants to see, they would be able to then. I actually am a big, huge forensic fan. I know that sounds like people go, she's weird. She's weird. She's crazy. No, I am very interested in the forensics side of this stuff. I also have worked in my past as a volunteer for a veterinarian, and I've seen surgery. So I've seen the insides of things, and that stuff never affected me in that. The part that affects me when I know that the victim is a child, or that something really bad happened to this person. That's when it kind of, I find it hard to detach myself from what I'm seeing, and just, there have been times where I have actually had to shut down and not listen, or you know pull myself away a bit from the trials that we've covered over the years. I will always mention Cherish Periwinkle was one of the hardest cases. It's a horrible case, child related, and with a monster of a man who had no care at all for anything. If you ever look that up, it's a gruesome one. But that is where we sit. Let me see. I want to see who is all. Have I seen who's Beanie's here? Hi, Beanie. Good to see you. Just kind of trying to see who else may have filtered in, and Deborah